Hello Internet, and welcome back to my series of film reviews. I hope you all enjoyed Sonic and Jonic's review of Deadpool and Wolverine, but now, here I am, with a nice, freshly opened bottle of Knob Creek whiskey that I'm gonna drink in its entirety, because I'm about to torture myself with an absolutely shitty movie called Dark Phoenix, or X-Men Dark Phoenix, as it is called in the opening title card. Released on June 7th, 2019, just a month and a half after Avengers Endgame, and 1 month before Spider-Man Far From Home. Dark Phoenix is another failed attempt at adapting the Dark Phoenix saga after it was butchered to smithereens in X-Men The Last Stand. This time, it takes place in 1992. What I hate about the X-Men prequels, First Class, Days of Future Past, Imposter Lips, and this garbage, is how each of them takes place 10 years apart, and the characters don't seem to age, especially with this movie. This movie is directed by Simon Kinberg, in his directorial debut. He is mostly known for writing and producing quite a few movies. The only other movie he directed is the 355. He even wrote and produced Dark Phoenix, thinking he can create what he considers to be his magnum opus. And to that, I say, bullshit! Prior to this review, I'd only seen this movie once, and I did not want to watch it again. But I had to for the sake of this review. Hence the bottle of whiskey that Deadpool gave me. And I'm gonna try not to pass out drunk while also finishing the entire bottle by the end of the review. Minor spoilers to Deadpool and Wolverine. I already have a list of movies I'd like to review as soon as I'm done with this and the New Mutants. Not counting the Batman, Joker, and Joker Folie à Deux. We got Blade, Blade 2, Blade Trinity, Daredevil, Elektra, Fantastic Four 2005, Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Fan Fuck Up 4. However, I'm not going to review the Punisher movies, the Ghost Rider movies, or 2003's Hulk. I'm also not going to bother with Morbius, or Madam Web, or Kraven the Hunter. But I might consider reviewing Venom, Venom the Third Ray Carnage, and Venom the Last Dance. And when I make it up to Fan Fuck Up 4, I'm gonna need more than just a bottle of strong liquor. I'm gonna need not only holy water, but a fucking crucifix as well, because that movie broke my spirit, my soul, and my sanity when I first saw it in 2015. That was the only time I saw it, and I am honestly afraid to watch it again. And after that, I'm gonna need to find something pleasant to watch, like Deadpool and Wolverine, or Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, or Captain America the Winter Soldier. Hell, I'd even take the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. Watching Dark Phoenix again, to me, was like being forced at gunpoint to play through the entirety of Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric on the Wii U, while also eating a Taco Bell Doritos Locos Taco contaminated with salmonella. And you're not allowed to leave the room or get up to go to the bathroom, and you end up covering the entire room with projectile vomit. It was that painful. Hey! I'd take watching Dark Phoenix in over that gruesome scenario I just described. With that said, this video will contain spoilers to Dark Phoenix, but nobody's gonna give a fuck and a half because this movie is that bad. And I'm here to tell you how bad it is, just so you don't have to go through the same grueling experience that I went through. So sit back, relax, open up a bottle of the strongest liquor you own, and ride along with me as I give my thoughts on Dark Phoenix. Wish me luck, folks, and I'm not gonna bother pouring the whiskey into a glass for this. I'm just gonna drink it straight from the bottle. Anyway, bottoms up! Oh wow, that is some strong fucking whiskey! They weren't fucking around with this. But anyway, here we go. The movie starts off in the year 1975, when Jean Grey was just a little girl. Now hold on! Hold the hell on! The opening scene of X-Men The Last Stand took place in 1986, when Jean Grey was a little girl. Did Simon Kinberg literally forget about the screenplay he wrote with Zach Penn in X-Men The Last Stand, and just say, fuck it, let's add a million plot holes in my next attempt at adapting the Dark Phoenix saga, just to anger audiences? I feel like that was Simon Kinberg's intention with Dark Phoenix. To anger audiences, make them walk out of the theater in anger, forcing the theater staff to issue so many refunds that the cash registers at the theater run dry. And get this, this movie ended up bombing so hard that it was pulled from theaters 3 fucking weeks after its release. I shit you not, that actually happened. That's like putting Horizon and American Saga Chapter 1 on digital less than a month after that bombed at the box office. And believe me when I say this, I'd rather you watch Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and 2019's Cats back-to-back than torture your soul, your spirit, and your sanity with Dark Phoenix. And if you do decide to watch Dark Phoenix, you're gonna need to go to your local church afterwards to cleanse your soul and spirit. But anyway, that was plot hole number 1. But trust me, there's plenty more plot holes to come. There she is, riding in a car with her parents when her mutant powers come into fruition, and she causes a car crash that kills her parents. And afterwards, she meets Charles Xavier, played for the final time by James McAvoy, who takes her to a school for the gifted. And then, we get the most bleak opening credit sequence in X-Men history, in which it was obvious that the X-Men movies were dying because of Disney buying Fox. and it went not with a bang, but with a whimper. Seriously, all we get is a black screen and no stylized opening credit sequences unlike with every other X-Men movie. They put absolutely zero effort into their opening title cards, and that right there should be an obvious red flag, showing that you're in for a real shit show. Like, you're watching a performance of Romeo and Juliet at your local theater, and during the part where Juliet says, "Oh Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?" the actress playing Juliet just pukes on Romeo's head due to a stomach bug that went unchecked. So then we cut to 1992, where the X-Men for some fucking reason are hailed as heroes and not freaks of nature. Like, did society just put their suspicions on mutants aside and just welcome them with open arms? Society normally sees mutants as freaks of nature, and this takes place in the same timeline as Logan and the New Mutants, mind you. In Logan, mutants are still frowned upon by society, and in the New Mutants, mutants are still defined as freaks of nature and abnormal. But in Dark Phoenix, the X-Men are hailed as heroes. And there you go, folks, plot hole number 2. Also, Jennifer Lawrence's makeup for Mystique in this movie. It looks hideous. It's like the makeup department just gave up halfway through, and they just went to their local Spirit Halloween and just put an unconvincing Halloween costume onto Jennifer Lawrence and passed it off as professional makeup for a big budget Hollywood movie. Also, the script for this movie is fucking horrendous. I never thought there would be a line in an X-Men movie that could be just as bad as, "Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning?" The same thing that happens to everything else, if not worse. But here, we get the absolute worst piece of dialogue in not only this movie, but the entire fucking X-Men film series.
It's funny. I can't actually remember the last time you were the one risking something. And by the way, the women are always saving the men around here. You might want to think about changing the name to X-Women.
Oh, what the fuck is this writing? You know what this calls for? Another swig of whiskey. Like, is that supposed to be some kind of fucking feminist message? Saying how women are supposed to get the equal amount of credit for saving society as men? That is the exact problem that modern Hollywood has with strong female characters, girl bosses, feminism, and everything the critical drinker often bitches and moans about. Now, I'm not an activist or any of that nonsense. I respect when a movie tries to appeal to certain audiences, but if it comes off as cringy and forced, then we're gonna have a serious problem. Anyway, the president, who for some reason is not George H.W. Bush, sends the X-Men to space to save a group of astronauts when the space shuttle Endeavour is damaged by a supposed solar flare. That solar flare is actually the Phoenix Force, which eventually consumes Jean Grey, in which Sophie Turner reprises her role in X-Men Apocalypse, leaving her to be the most powerful and most dangerous mutant who nobody should fuck with. And here, we have my biggest problem with this movie. Evan Peters' Quicksilver. He isn't given much to do in this movie, and he doesn't have one of those badass Quicksilver moments unlike with Days of Future Past and Apocalypse. He was my favorite character in Days of Future Past and Apocalypse, but here, Simon Kinberg just doesn't give a fuck and a half about him, and only has him appear in the first half of the movie, and just blatantly forget about him during the film's climax, and it only goes downhill from there. Again, society treats the X-Men like heroes for some fucking reason. I mean, come on, they're not the Avengers for fuck's sake. Society should be skeptical about mutants, not welcome them with open arms. And apparently, the Blackbird can go into space now, which it clearly wasn't designed for to begin with. Oh yeah, your somewhat favorite characters return from X-Men Apocalypse, like Ty Sheridan as Cyclops, Sophie Turner as Jean Grey, Cody Smith-McPhee as Nightcrawler, and Alexandra Shipp as Storm. And clearly, she didn't get rid of the accent that Halle Berry would never in a million years use. And then, we have the final appearances of James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Nicholas Hoult, Evan Peters, and Jennifer Lawrence, in which she should have been responsible for this movie's Razzie nomination for worst fucking makeup! Now, this movie was actually nominated for 2 Razzie Awards, and none of them had to do with makeup. In fact, there is no worst makeup category in the Razzie Awards. But anyway, Dark Phoenix was nominated for worst prequel, remake, ripoff, or sequel, but that got beat out by Rambo Last Blood. And worst supporting actress for Jessica Chastain, but that got beat out by Rebel Wilson in Cats. Oh, don't get me started on Jessica Chastain's character in this movie. Jessica Chastain plays the leader of a shape-shifting alien race called the Dabari. Not the Jabari tribe which M'Baku is a member of, Dabari. She seeks to capture and destroy the Phoenix, and this is the first time the X-Men had to encounter aliens, especially aliens that shapeshift as if they were Skrulls. Now, fun fact, according to an interview with Ty Sheridan, the shapeshifting antagonists in this movie were supposed to be Skrulls, but during reshoots, they changed it to the Dabari for some fucking reason. Maybe because Captain Marvel already beat Fox to the punch with Skrulls, who fucking knows? Jessica Chastain's character is named Vuk, that's V-U-K, but I'm just gonna refer to her as Jessica Chastain, because that character name is just stupid and not intimidating. Like, imagine going to a convenience store to buy yourself a bag of beef jerky and Dr. Pepper, and a robber with a gun comes up to you and says, "Give me your beef jerky and your Dr. Pepper." And you know next to nothing about the robber. And you ask the robber's name. And the robber tells you, "My name is Buck." And instead of screaming in terror, you just spent the next half hour laughing your ass off at how silly and not intimidating that name is. That's just about as stupid as being called Taserface.
I only ask one thing. That your high priestess tell him the name of the man what sealed his fate. Taserface.
And the worst part about the shape-shifting aliens in this movie, they don't turn into any other characters. They just stay the same characters throughout the entire movie. The lead alien impersonates a lady played by Jessica Chastain, only to spend the rest of the movie as Jessica Chastain. They don't even turn into any of the X-Men or copy their powers. My God! This is the worst Marvel project to involve shape-shifting aliens since Secret Invasion. And I'd much rather binge the entirety of Secret Invasion again over watching Dark Phoenix. And to that I say, time for another gulp of whiskey. I'm only 1/3 through my bottle of whiskey, and I'm already getting the giggles. But I have to keep a straight face and not pass out if I'm gonna make it to the end of the video having finished the whole bottle. So, while trying to save the astronauts in space, Jean is struck by the solar flare and absorbs its energy. That means that everyone who ever comes in contact with her has to run far away. Nightcrawler, being the only X-Man with the ability to teleport, brings her back into the Blackbird, which again is not designed for space travel. And so, the astronauts are saved, and the X-Men are hailed as heroes to not only the school, but to the public as well, even though they should be skeptical of mutants like in the earlier movies, and the cartoon, and the comics, and X-Men '97. And then, Raven has a disagreement with Charles about how women don't get the same amount of credit as the men. And we get that god-awful line about ex-women. I don't want to play it again, because if I did, who knows what'll happen. But I'm gonna do it anyway, and see what the hell happens.
It's funny. I can't actually remember the last time you were the one risking something. And by the way, the women are always saving the men around here. You might want to think about changing the name to X-Women.
You know what this calls for? Another gulp of whiskey. Good God, I gotta save my whiskey for the end. As a result of being exposed to the solar flare, Jean's powers get amplified, and also uncontrollable as she begins to become the world's most dangerous mutant. Charles explains to the other X-Men that he suppressed Jean's memories of causing the car accident at the beginning of the movie, to keep her psychological trauma from making her unstable. But her enhanced abilities are destroying the mental blocks, and they go all out of control. This happens when she blacks out at an outdoor party and causes Cyclops to be injured. Turns out that Charles lied to Jean about both her parents dying in the car crash, and thus it's revealed that Jean's father is alive. So then Jean leaves the X-Men mansion and finds her father. And that's when she goes completely fucking insane, unleashing her new Phoenix powers. Her father has forsaken his daughter when it is revealed that it was Jean who was responsible for her mother's death. And so, the dickhead gave his daughter up to Charles. And so, the X-Men fly over to Jean's father's house to try to bring her home. Which I will never forgive the fucking makeup department on how they screwed up Jennifer Lawrence's hair and makeup. And in the ensuing conflict, Quicksilver, who lacks any of the badass scenes from Days of Future Past and Apocalypse, is injured and is given the boot for the last half of the movie. And then, Jean goes on a murderous rampage attacking not only the X-Men, but local police as well. And that's when Jean becomes public enemy number 1, and also results in the general public not trusting mutants. So wait, let me get this straight. During the first half of the movie, the public was all cool with mutants being superheroes, and it's the actions of one Omega-level mutant that causes them to change their view on mutants? What the fuck kind of garbage writing is this? And you want to know what the worst part of this entire scene is? It's how the X-Men have to deal with a personal tragedy with one of their own.
Oh, look at that. I've been impaled.
This scene expected audiences to cry and feel heartbroken because a character died on screen. But I cried and felt heartbroken for a different reason. And you want to know what that reason is? Well, I'm glad you asked. Rebecca Romijn has been erased from existence! In my review of X-Men Apocalypse, I questioned when Mystique would turn to the side of evil and work alongside Ian McKellen. But now, thanks to Dark Phoenix, that question got crumpled up and thrown into the fucking incinerator. Mystique died as one of the good guys, when the first 3 X-Men movies portrayed her as one of the bad guys played by Rebecca Romijn. But now, thanks to this fuckfest, Rebecca Romijn has been erased from existence. And that right there is another plot hole. The first X-Men movie is supposed to take place 8 years after the events of Dark Phoenix. There is no explanation as to how Charles went from James McAvoy to Patrick Stewart in 8 years flat. Same with the transition from Michael Fassbender to Ian McKellen. And with Jennifer Lawrence dead, who else is supposed to help Ian McKellen out with his evil misdeeds? Well, then again, The Last Stand was erased from existence because of Days of Future Past, so nothing makes sense anymore. You know what this calls for? You guessed it! Another swig of whiskey! I apologize in advance that my speech becomes slurred as I rant on about Dark Phoenix. I brought this upon myself to drink an entire bottle of whiskey while talking about Dark Phoenix. And seeing that I'm already halfway through my bottle of whiskey, let the torment continue. So, after erasing Rebecca Romaine out of existence, Hank becomes so pissed off at Charles because he was so close to Raven, and he blames him for her death. And meanwhile, with Jean, she flies over to a place where our very own Eric Lencher is hiding out living a peaceful life. I think it's Genosha, seeing that he's living in a free society of mutants. And when he sees blood on Jean's clothes, he keeps asking whose blood it is. Jean came to Eric to ask him to help her control her feelings and rage. But when military helicopters arrive to take Jean in, she unleashes the Dark Phoenix and fucks everyone up beyond belief. And now, Jean is on Eric's hit list. Jean is also on Hank's hit list too, and he becomes one of the bad guys in a fight outside a New York apartment complex. And that's when she's discovered by Jessica Chastain. There is no fucking way I'm calling her by her character name because Vuk does not sound threatening or intimidating, unlike Thanos or Ultron. Jessica Chastain reveals to Jean that the Phoenix Force in Jean's veins is what wiped out her planet, consuming everything in its path until it was drawn to Jean. And did I mention how awful the writing in this movie is? It's like it was written by a middle schooler and not a professional Hollywood screenwriter. It's not just the X-Woman line that bothers me, but the rest of the entire fucking movie as well. And of course, Ty Sheridan gets his obligatory PG-13 one fuck rule. But for that one, it just felt forced and had no meaning. At least with X-Men First Class, it was played out for laughs. Same with Days of Future Past and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, if your goal is to write a PG-13 rated movie, and you follow the one fuck rule, make it have meaning, whether it be for laughs, or to show that a character is pissed off and is ready to fuck people up. Don't just add it in there to make a character sound fucking edgy like with Cyclops in this movie. I feel like they only added it in there because there was already an R-rated X-Men movie called Logan, and that movie had a shit ton of fucks in it. And so, Fox was obligated to abide by the one fuck rule for the remaining X-Men movies they had before Disney gave them the fucking boot. And you wanna know what this fucking calls for? Another fucking swig of my fucking Knob Creek whiskey! Woo-wee, I can do this all day. This is fun. So Beast leaves the X-Men because he blames Charles for the fact that Rebecca Romaine has been erased from existence. He steals the Blackbird and flies over to Genosha to tell Eric that Rebecca Romaine was erased from existence. I'm sorry. I know I should be saying that Raven is dead, but I just can't help it. By killing off Mystique in this movie, they practically erased Rebecca Romaine out of existence. Now I really gotta ease it with the whiskey from here on forward. Or is it here on out? I'm too intoxicated to speak proper English. And so, Nightcrawler teleports Charles, Cyclops, and Storm over to Jean's location to try to talk some sense into her, while Eric and Hank want her dead to avenge the blipping of Rebecca Romaine from existence. And then, a battle ensues. Eric tries to apprehend Jean, but he's quickly defeated, and Charles is forced to walk without his wheelchair, and he convinces her to read his memories, thus restoring her to the side of good. Feeling guilty for all the destruction she caused, she attempts to let Jessica Chastain take the Phoenix Force right out of her, until Cyclops stops her when she reveals the Skrulls' intent to use the Phoenix Force to conquer Earth. Did I say Skrulls? I meant the fucking Dabari. But since I'm too drunk to give a fucking F, I'm just gonna call them Skrulls. And so, every mutant involved in the attack is arrested by government officials for some fucking reason. They are locked away on a train. There is no explanation for this whatsoever, or why it happened. And frankly, who the fuck cares at this point? The movie is almost over, and my bottle of whiskey is almost empty. After the X-Men convince Hank that Rebecca Romaine was erased from existence, believing that there is still good in Jean, he rejoins the X-Men and vows to protect her while Jessica Chastain and the Skrulls attack. And so, we get what I think is a pretty cool action sequence, which isn't saying a whole lot given how fucking awful this movie is. When the humans are overpowered, they set the mutants free, and they attack the Skrulls with all their fury. Charles telepathically apologizes to Jean for fucking with her memories, believing that she deserved love and a family who will love her back. And thus, she forgives him, and she unleashes the full Phoenix power to fight off against the Skrulls, and send Jessica Chastain to the drawing board. Jessica Chastain tries to drain the Phoenix Force from Jean, who flies her into space to unleash all of her power and kill Jessica Chastain. And we don't know what happens to Jean, but we can guess she survived because she transformed herself into an actual phoenix. And then we get the absolute worst plot hole in the entire fucking movie. The school is reading Jean Grey School for Gifted Youngsters, where Charles retires as dean, with Hank taking his place. What the actual fuck? In the first Deadpool movie, the school is still referred to as Xavier School, and I'm pretty sure the last scene in Days of Future Past takes place in Xavier School, and not fucking Jean Grey School. Does Days of Future Past no longer matter? If Sophie Turner is a fucking phoenix at the end of the movie, then how the fuck does Famke Janssen return at the end of Days of Future Past? Okay, fuck this movie, and fuck these plot holes! Okay, I'm sorry for screaming, but this movie makes me so pissed off! And for that, I'm gonna finish the whiskey. Oh, fuck. I'm starting to regret drinking this whiskey, but I brought this upon myself. The movie ends in Paris with Charles and Eric playing one last game of chess while the Phoenix flies above them. The end. Good riddance. Go fuck yourself. Go eat a bag of dicks, and let's finally wrap up. I'm giving Dark Phoenix a 1 out of 10. If I could go any lower, I could. After X-Men Origins Wolverine, I couldn't even begin to imagine an X-Men movie that could be worse than that. I mean, yes, the special effects were nice compared to X-Men Origins Wolverine, but the writing was terrible, the makeup for Jennifer Lawrence was just an absolute fucking eyesore, and this movie had more plot holes than a fucking slice of Swiss cheese. And dare I say, watching this movie again made me appreciate X-Men Origins Wolverine more, which sounds wrong in every way imaginable. X-Men Origins Wolverine was one of those so bad it's good movies, but with Dark Phoenix, it's the exact fucking opposite. This movie had absolutely zero redeeming qualities. Quicksilver barely had any screen time, and he didn't have any badass Quicksilver moments unlike Days of Future Past and Apocalypse. Jessica Chastain was a forgettable villain, and she was easily the worst thing about this movie. It's no fucking wonder she got nominated for Worst Supporting Actress at the Razzies. Not to mention this movie was plagued with reshoots, especially the entire third act, and the result was just a straight up mess. Even more so than the fucking 2016 Ghostbusters reboot that doesn't exist. I hate this movie. I hate everything about this movie. It's one of those movies that makes me so angry every time I think about it. And there's hardly any movies that make me feel that way. But there are 3 other examples I can think of, and they are Ghostbusters 2016, Fantastic Four 2015, and Madam fucking Web. But all in all, don't waste your time or your money with Dark Phoenix. Stay far away from it. If you want a true adaptation of the Dark Phoenix saga from the X-Men comics, just watch the X-Men animated series on Disney+. And when it comes to the 2 failed live-action adaptations of this storyline, I have this to say. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Honestly, the X-Men films should have ended with Logan. Logan was already a perfect ending as it is. We didn't need another X-Men prequel movie when we already know what happens to Patrick Stewart and Logan. I mean, I know we got Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm just glad that it didn't acknowledge Dark Phoenix and how much of a fucking mess it is. But my point still stands. Stay far away from Dark Phoenix, if you know what's good for your soul, your spirit, and your sanity. Now I'm done rambling. I need to lie down because I had way too much to drink. But first, I may need to go to the bathroom. Oh god. Oh god! Okay, I'm sorry you had to hear that. But by the time we get the next video, I'll most likely be hungover beyond belief. But yes, stay tuned for my upcoming review of the New Mutants coming soon. Until then, I'll see you all next time. Oh, my head hurts. What was I thinking drinking all that whiskey? Do people normally do that after watching shitty movies? I better want to get to bed. This hangover is gonna be a nasty one. But for real, I'll see you all next time.